Welcome to Smiling Through the Tears. I want to thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Tonight, we're going to dive into a very hot topic in today's world, what it's like to date a narcissist and the long-lasting effects that it can have on one's life, even after escaping the horror of that relationship. And I'm going to get into some of the things that I went through because I had the fortune of having to go through a relationship like that. And I'm going to let you in on some of the things that I learned that will hopefully help you to be able to overcome this and maybe remove yourself from a situation like this. But first, let's see what the definition of a narcissist is. Symptoms may vary from person to person, but the most common symptoms include being overly boastful, exaggerating one's own achievements, pretending to be superior to others, lack of empathy for others, looking down on others as inferior, monopolizing conversations, and being impatient, angry, unhappy, depressed, or having mood swings when criticized. Easily disappointed when expected importance is not given, always craves for the best in everything, and they think that they deserve the best. Has a very fragile self-esteem, very insecure, and what they want their victims to do is feel inferior to them. Most narcissists would never admit this. They would deny every one of these symptoms, even if they had them all and it was obvious and evident. A narcissistic relationship, they tend to move very quickly. For me, it was like a whirlwind, and you don't really understand what's happening until you're already wrapped up in this web. Initially, it starts out with love bombing. And if you've never experienced it or recognized the red flags, it seems rather flattering. And we'll get into some of the things that they'll say to you during the love bombing phase that every woman would love to hear, or every man. But the problem with it is it's not sincere and it's all lies just to pull you into their little web. There are various stages that establish the power, and their prime goal is to eventually dismantle the victim's confidence and their identity. After the victim has been lured into the narcissist web, the abusive behaviors slowly start to emerge. They're subtle at first, and then it's like a yo-yo between being loving and abusive. And this makes it very difficult for a victim to know what's happening and leave before it escalates. Understanding the stages and cycles of this abusive relationship could save you years of hurt, pain, and suffering. Thankfully for me, I was able to escape the pure hell of this relationship after only a little over a year. Unfortunately, many victims find themselves in a cycle with these monsters for years because it becomes a cycle and it becomes an addiction. This is a very real thing, trauma bonding. And if you've never experienced it in a narcissistic relationship or an abusive relationship, you will really struggle to understand the trauma bond, and you'll have a lack of ability to understand it. And it will literally rob them from a fulfilling life or a large portion of it. So let's go over the stages now. And I can tell you from experience that these are very true. I went through every one of these stages. The first stage is love bombing. And in the love bombing stage, I have never felt this way about anyone before. You're the most beautiful woman I've ever met. We're soulmates. I've never loved anybody the way I love you. I mean, they give it to you strong. Next comes, after they realize that they've conquered you, they start to value the devalues, which they become critical of everything you do. Nothing you do is right. Number 3, the partner confronts the narcissist over the devaluation, and when confronted, the narcissist get very offensive. Then the narcissist goes into defensive mechanism that kicks in. Then the partner tries to repair the relationship and maintain peace, and the narcissist disregards or gives a violent treatment. Then the partner suffers out pain and very confused. Then the narcissist begins hoovering, and they promise to change, and they'll buy you gifts to show their love. In my case, I had computer, big screen TV, all these gifts given to me. And in reality, all I want it to do is be treated well. The gifts mean nothing when somebody's treating you like that. And then the relationship is restored, and the conditioning to expect the abusive relationship starts. And so we're going to go over some of the tactics that are used by the narcissist and how these stages play out. And the first one is gaslighting. Greg, do you know what gaslighting is?
Not sure, but real quick, before I attempt to answer that, you covered kind of a brief overview of a narcissist and what they do. You're going to get into more details, thankfully. But what do you have any insight of what causes somebody to become a narcissist? Is there any research you've done on that, or anything that your opinion on that?
My opinion on that is that the narcissist was during their childhood, they maybe didn't get the attention and the love that they wanted or needed, and so they put on a fake facade of, as they become an adult, of how important they are, and to gain that security that they didn't have as a child, they try to put on this mask that they are all powerful and that they are very confident, and it's all a lie, and it's covering up basically their internal child that was wounded, and so they take that hurt, place it upon their victims. That's my opinion.
Okay. Well, gaslighting, when I think of that, I think of a way to hide maybe what one is actually doing themselves by saying that the other person is doing it. That's what I think of gaslighting, but I'm sure you have a little bit more details on what it is.
Yeah, the definition of gaslighting, it refers to making someone question their perception and sense of reality. It's a tactic often used by narcissist people because it puts them in the position of power. They love to be in power.
I'm assuming you probably experienced that with this relationship you're referencing.
Absolutely. So many instances. One of the ones that stick out is about a receipt that I found. I came home for Christmas and he stayed with his family for Christmas. And while we were apart, I had a feeling things were going on that shouldn't be going on. And I noticed certain things, but I tried to, think the best. And then when I finally got back to where he was, because I was living there at the time, and when I got back there, it's funny how God reveals things to us and we refuse to listen, or we pray and ask God. I prayed and asked God if there's anything going on, like, let me find something. I did almost instantly. So what I found was a receipt laying on his nightstand that had a White Claw and the beer that he drank. And anybody that knows anything about White Claws, most men do not drink White Claw. That is a girly drink. And so there was 2 of those. And I asked him, like, did you go somewhere? He's like, no, that's not my receipt. I'm like, that's interesting. Why? How did it get on your nightstand? He said, well, the waitress must have accidentally gave that one to me. And I said, oh, okay. Well, then fast forward 2 days, I found another receipt for the same date on the floor, and it was for a place called Little Italy, where there was 2 dinners purchased and the same White Claw and the same beer, 2 of each, and again the same beer that he drank. And so I confronted him that night about that, and I was like, I know you're lying to me. Like, I know that it's not coincidental that waitress accidentally gave you 2 receipts at 2 different locations, and it was the same alcoholic beverages on those receipts. So I had an idea. I said, I got an idea. Get your credit cards out, and let's see if the last 4 numbers match any of your credit cards. And if they don't, then I'll believe you. So he got his credit cards out, and lo and behold, guess what? It matched the last 4 numbers. And then he still said to me, this is so funny how they are such liars. He said, well, there's so many credit cards, and it's not unusual for credit cards to have the last 4 numbers. And at that point, I thought he literally thinks I'm an idiot and that I'm stupid. And I said, I am not stupid. Like, I know better than that. I know for a fact that you were there, and this is your receipt, and you're with a woman. And if you would just tell me, maybe we can work it out. But if you're going to lie to me, I'm going to leave and go home, because I'm not going to be with somebody that can't tell me the truth. And he said he swore to me that it was a mistake, those were not his receipts, that was not his card, all the things. So I packed up my stuff, and it was like 1 a.m, and off I go back to Ohio. Well, I was in Ohio, but my side of Ohio. So I go back home, and within 2 days, he shows up at my house. I ended up renting a little place because I had sold everything, because we were going to have this beautiful life, and he sold me on everything. And so I got a little place to live in, and I literally had nothing, because he told me to get rid of everything, because everything that was his was now mine. His home, his furniture, everything. I didn't need anything. We were going to get married, and everything that's his is mine, all those things. And so I was at my house, and he ended up showing up at my door, sobbing, and telling me that he was ready to tell me the truth about the receipts. And so he sat down with tears streaming down his face and swore to me that it was not what I thought. And he gave me a story. I'm not going to say what it was because I don't want anybody getting in trouble. But he told me this far-fetched story. But I was a little big sucker and I believed it. And I think what made me believe it was he just seemed like, for the first time, he had tears streaming down his face. Like, he seemed sincere. And I think also I wanted to believe it. I want to believe that people have the best intentions for you. But unfortunately, that's not the case in a lot of instances, especially when you're dealing with a narcissist. They never have your best interest in heart. They think of one and only, and that's themselves. And so that receipt incident was the start of me really starting to have my eyes more open to things, though.
How far into the relationship would you estimate that incident occurred?
It was about 7 months into it.
Okay.
So prior to that, I did see a lot of other red flags that I dismissed and ignored a lot of times after confronting it. So also, like, when the first time we went shopping together, it was an interesting experience. I was really sick during that time, and I was going to a wedding, and we were going shopping to get me a dress for a wedding. And I sat down on a bench, and apparently I smiled at the guy sitting on the bench, and he said, I seen a whole change in his whole demeanor. And we got up to walk away, and he's like, I saw what you did. And I said, okay, what did I do? And he said, I saw you make eye contact for 10 seconds with that guy and smile at him. And I said, okay. I said, I might have smiled just out of common courtesy, but like, I couldn't even tell you what color his eyes were or anything. I have no idea what you're talking about. And he was like, no, you know. And so then we get in the truck to leave, and he is mad again. And I'm like, what is your deal? And he said, that same guy walked down the aisle and you guys locked eyes, and I counted 20 seconds that time you stared in each other's eyes.
Wow. And
I was just like, that should have been my first sign to like run. But, I didn't. And I just thought, that's interesting. And that's very strange. But, maybe he's just really insecure or whatever. So I tried not to think a lot into it. Then another real quick story, when we went to dinner, every time we went to dinner, if I looked up at all, I noticed that I got to a point where I kind of stared at the floor most of the time, because if I looked up, I was always looking at a man, and I was always checking somebody out. And so it got to be where it was, to just have peace, it was just best just to look straight ahead on the floor or look at him and not look around, because anytime I looked around, it was a big fight when we got home, because I was looking for somebody. So life with a narcissist is very stressful. And it's just, there's nothing enjoyable about it. Like, they bring no joy to your life. It starts out with things that they say to you. Like, if you confront any of those things, oh, you're so sensitive. Oh, you're so emotional. Oh, you're crazy. And after they insult you so much, as the relationship goes on, the gaslighting becomes more frequent and more severe. And they might even dismiss you and say that the way you feel isn't real. And they never validate anything about your feelings or what your thoughts are. And if you catch them in a lie about something they said, they'll say, oh, you're remembering that wrong. That's not how that really happened. Or, no, I never said that. Or if you are having a discussion and you're confronting them about something they did wrong, not this again. I never said that. That never happened. I did this because you did this. You're so paranoid. You're crazy. You're broken. His best favorite thing to say to me was, you need fixed and you need counseling because you're crazy and you're broken. No, I wasn't broken when I met him, but I can assure you that I was broken into pieces when he was done with me. And over time, this chips away at your sense of reality. And you do start to really, truly question your perceptions and your memory. And you become increasingly unsure and dependent on the narcissist. And that's exactly the way they want it. And then the next thing is the incident finally happens. It can be verbal, emotional, physical. The perpetrator blames, argues, threatens, intimidates you. And eventually the abuse and manipulation reaches their peak, which is considered the incident, and the phase in the cycle of the abuse. This can manifest in different ways. It could be intimidation, threats, verbal abuse, physical abuse, or a combination of all of them.
And did this happen in your relationship with this guy?
Yes. I actually had all of these things occur. I was verbally, emotionally, and physically abused by this person. The worst verbal abuse I remember is him telling me to get a gun that he purchased for me, go load it, hold it to my head, and blow my head off because I was nothing but a waste of breath in this world.
Ugh. Ugh.
And so when you think somebody loves you and they tell you that they want you to blow your head off, it's very hurtful. I mean, it just really, it cuts you all the way to the core of your being, into your soul. And the worst emotional abuse that I recall is constantly making me doubt myself, making me feel as though I wasn't remembering things properly, and making me feel that I was starting to think maybe I am crazy. And because I was pointing out things that were happening and he was denying that they happened. And I know that I saw certain things with my own eyes. And even after I saw them, for example, even the receipt, he would still deny it and tell me that I was crazy and paranoid and all those things. And the worst physical abuse, which there were several of them, I really thought that he was going to eventually hurt me and put me in the hospital after this event. And my friends were all very concerned that he could definitely hurt me. One of the most vivid ones in my mind, though, is we have broken up because I couldn't deal with it anymore. And I was done with all of the ways that he was treating me. And I knew that I deserved better. And it's like you're in a pit when you're in a relationship like this. And you're putting your hands up to pull yourself out. And you just can't seem to grip the top of that pit. Or they came over and step on your finger and push you back in. Or they come up and try to pretend like they're going to help you out. And it's just a constant cycle of you think they love you, they don't. You think they love you, they don't.
Like you said.
Yeah, it's just it's the expectations. You never know what to expect daily. Well, then he had a business trip to go to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and he begged me to go. And he said this would be a second chance for us to try to put everything in the past and try to work things out. So with much reluctancy, I agreed to go. I know. What is wrong with me? I kept this a secret from my family and friends because I knew they would think that I had completely lost my mind. So I went to Fort Lauderdale and we were having a great time. We went out to dinner one night on the oceanfront restaurant, had a fight, and as we were going into the parking garage to get out of the car, I was running my mouth about whatever it was we were fighting about. And he literally, before I even knew what happened, grabbed me by my throat and slammed me up against a cement wall, where I proceeded to pass out and pee my pants. And when I came to, I dropped my purse, and all of my stuff in my purse went all over the parking garage. And he literally left me lying on the ground there in an unfamiliar city. And I was so angry that he would leave me lying there in an unfamiliar place where I didn't know anybody, and that he would choke me so much that I literally thought that I was going to die. I saw my life and my kids flash before my eyes, thinking I would never see them again. It was a very frightening experience. I've never experienced anything quite as frightening in my life. And so when I went back into the restaurant, I told the girl that I was choked by him, and ended up, make a long story short, he ended up coming back. And I didn't really know where to go. I didn't even know where to tell the girl to take me because she offered to take me back. I didn't even know where our hotel was. I didn't pay attention because he was driving. So I agreed to go back to the hotel room with him. And then when I get home, we're going to be nice for the next couple of days that we're stuck here together. We'll be cordial to each other. But when I get off that plane to go home, I never want to see you again. And of course, everything was my fault, and if I wouldn't have ran my mouth, he wouldn't have did that, and I was exaggerating. It wasn't as bad as I made it to be, and all those things. And I just think that I was literally putting my life in danger by being with this person. Even though I did feel at the time that I really cared about him and loved him, I had to get to the point where I loved me more than I loved him. I had to get myself away from that kind of environment, because the next time it could very well be my life coming to an end, and nobody is worth that. Why we allow people to come into our lives and treat us like that and accept those kinds of behaviors is very sad. And when I reflect back on the time in my life, I literally think I temporarily lost my sense. I didn't think normally.
I could tell.
My best friend was so confused, and she couldn't even figure out why I wasn't seeing things clearly, because of course she wasn't emotionally involved. So she could see things so clearly and was so lost as to why I was going back to this and allowing this kind of behavior, because I'm a strong woman. I do not let people do things to me that are unacceptable. And I don't know why I allowed it. She didn't know why I allowed it.
The method of the narcissist, right?
Yeah.
The lies that they build up to make you feel a certain way, the best you've probably ever thought, because of all the love bombing that you mentioned earlier. That probably has a lot to do with it.
Absolutely. Emotional abuse and control is another technique. Greg, do you know what that is?
a lot of the things where somebody is manipulating you by putting you down. When you went over that, he made me think that what he was doing to you is basically brainwashing you and controlling you to behave in the way he wanted you to. So if he attacked you to the degree where you just didn't want to go through that again, he trained you not to look at anybody else, to just look at him or the floor. How horrible. So I can see that's an example of this emotional abuse and control.
And it's funny that you would say that, because he would say to me on multiple occasions, if you would just learn to do what I tell you to do, everything would be fine. Those were his exact words. In fact, he emailed me one day and said, I was thinking about how we can make this work because I really want to be with you and I want this to work. And we're both very controlling people, and one of us has to be submissive. And I think if you submit to me in all of your ways, then I think this relationship would be great. And I literally read that and laughed out loud, because yes, the Bible does say that a woman should submit to her husband or a significant other. However, it also says that a man should love his woman, wife, significant other as Christ loves the church. And I certainly was not being loved as Christ loved the church, because here's the way it works out. When a man truly does love a woman and treats her the way that Christ does, and Christ laid down his life for us, that's the kind of love that he has for us. And if a man is willing to lay down his life for a woman and treat her with kindness and gentleness like Christ does for us, she automatically wants to submit to that. That is something that she will do willingly and without being pressured to do. But no woman wants to submit to a man that's demanding and constantly hurting her, and that's not what the Bible says, that you were supposed to submit to men like that. I don't think God expects that of us.
Concur. These emotional abuses and control, can you think of any other incidents that you felt that he used to take control, or that he abused you?
Oh my gosh, again, there's so many. He got me a new computer, and my first thought was, oh my gosh, that's so sweet. And he said, I need your phone in order to connect everything properly. I don't know anything about that, and he's a computer whiz. And so I gave him my computer, gave him my phone. Needless to say, I didn't know that he was connecting my phone and my computer and making it so that he was able to track all of my phone activity and track my whereabouts. And the only way I found this out was because I came home on the 4th of July to spend the 4th of July with my family. And during that time, we were on another breakup. And while I was home and he was there, and at that point he was tracking me, which I didn't know, but he was also asking my friends on Facebook to go out with him during that time. I got messages from some of my friends saying that your boyfriend texted me and asked me if I'd go out with him.
Wow.
That's how ignorant and just outlandish that they can be. They have this idea that they are irresistible to everybody and anybody. So anyways, while I went to Newton Falls to watch the fireworks with my children, I get a text message while I'm there. It said, where are you at a guy's house? And I said, I'm watching fireworks with my children. And he texted me back, no, I know that you're meeting a guy there. I know that you're in Newton Falls. And I was like kind of freaked out. I'm like, how do you know where I'm at? And then he said, well, somehow your phone accidentally connected to my phone when I was hooking up your computer and everything, and somehow it's like it got a tracking system. I'm like, somehow it doesn't just somehow happen. You obviously did that, and you have no right to track my whereabouts. That's not okay. So yeah, he was tracking me. He also had video cameras. Him and I had a fight at his house one night, and I went out on the porch and called my best friend, and I was like totally trashing him and talking about all the things he was doing to me. And I came in the house and he was like, oh, you gonna sit out there and talk about me? And I said, what do you mean? He said, I heard everything you said. I'm like, how do you know what I said? I have cameras inside and outside. I know your every move, so you better watch yourself.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was being monitored on a daily basis, 24 hours a day, and that just did not settle well with me. I've learned through dating him, there's a lot of hurt. He hurt me in many ways and caused a lot of pain, but he also taught me many things to look out for, red flags to watch out for. And one thing I learned, if you haven't gone through this and you don't know this, let me tell you something. basically everything that you're being accused of from a narcissist is them.
Is them actually doing it themselves, or
Yeah.
it's a way that they hide what they're doing?
It's them confessing basically everything that they're doing. So if they're accusing you of it, you better bet your dollar that that's exactly what they're doing. I was completely faithful, and I was being accused daily of cheating. He was the one that I found a girl's number and all kinds of things on his phone, which all began one night when he was at my house. I was just sitting next to him looking at my phone, and he ripped it out of my hands, started going through it, which I didn't care because I had nothing to hide. But then I took his phone, tried to take his phone out of his hand, and he wrestled with me and resisted and wouldn't let me have his phone. And so we were literally on the floor trying to get the phone.
Wow.
And so his son was actually there, and he was like, "That's funny, Dad, that you went through her phone, but you won't let her go through your phone. What are you doing, hiding something?" So even a teenage kid knew that this was not normal behavior. So as we struggled to get the phone, he ended up going in the bathroom, locking the door, coming out about 10 minutes later, and then handing over the phone. So obviously he deleted things and all of the maybe messages or whatever. He
Evidence,
deleted.
huh?
Yes. And so then, but I'm not a dummy. So as we were sitting on the couch that night, he got on his phone a couple times, and I watched him put his code into his phone. And so I thought, okay, let's wait until he's not around. I'm going to get in there and do a little more research. So of course he went upstairs to take a shower, and he's being, Mr. I'm going to not have anything to hide. I'm going to leave my phone laying here. So he left his phone laying there, probably not assuming that I had the passcode. And so when he went upstairs, I got on his phone and went into his messenger and had messages from girls. And then I went real deep into his text messages. And when we first met, there was messages where when we were dating that he was talking to a girl on a dating site, and found all kinds of information. So needless to say, that night I told him that he could pack his stuff and go home because I wasn't dealing with him lying to me. And of course, again, he didn't do that, and those girls wanted him, and the only reason that they were reaching out and they were mad at him because he wouldn't return their messages and all this stuff. I mean, it was just one lie after another continuously. But I've decided, and when I enter into a new relationship, if I have to go through somebody's phone and I always have to be worrying about what they're doing on their phone, it's not worth it. I shouldn't be with them if I can't trust them. I think I just got myself into such a horrible cycle of toxicity with him that I became a person that I was not proud of and did things that I was not proud of and behaved in ways I wasn't proud of. And he had a way of hurting me to the core of my being by trying to talk about other girls reaching out to him, things that he would like to do with them, and all these things that were so hurtful to me that would make me act in ways that wasn't who I was. He was changing who I was, and I didn't like that. And those were some of the things that led me to decide that I had to get out of this relationship. Every single day, I was losing a little bit more of myself. So the next stage is stonewalling. Greg, you want to touch on that?
I'm not real familiar with it, but just by the word itself, I would think like trying to stall, tried to like prevent information from being known, kind of a stalling technique.
Kind of. What it mainly is when they withhold from you love, affection, communication, it's their way to punish you.
Oh, okay.
To further solidify their position of power, because they're all about the power. This can cause the victim to become insecure and anxious, which I was very insecure at that time and anxious because I never knew what to expect. While still holding on to the narcissist facade, they walk on eggshells, trying not to upset the narcissist and win their approval. So I had some experiences with this. I sold my house and all my belongings pretty much to move 4 hours away to be with him. And he promised me a life full of love, and I bought into all the lies he told me of how amazing it was going to be. But anytime that I questioned anything, he would take all of my things and throw them out in the front yard and tell me to leave. And then he would block me for several hours, and I would have to load all my stuff and my clothes into my car and either go to a parking lot or start heading home. And I would literally sit in my car and cry for hours sometimes. And I feel like during that time, my eyes were literally permanently swollen because I literally cried like, I would say 90% of the time. That I was far from home, not knowing anyone, feeling very lonely. Those were some of the loneliest days of my life. I felt very unloved. I felt embarrassed because I moved that far away and my life had turned into pure hell. I felt disappointed in myself for allowing myself to continue in a relationship that I knew was nothing but destructive to me in every single way, but not knowing how to escape. If you've never been in a relationship like this, it's so easy to judge the women and men that are going through this, and you're like, just leave. But it's not that simple. It really isn't. There's a grip that's on you that it's very difficult to get out of. I was addicted to that relationship. It was like a drug. It was so unhealthy. And after a few hours of blocking me after he would throw me out, he would call me and try to get me to come back to him and apologize for everything that he did. He'd want me to turn around if I was heading home. And of course, most of the time, guess what I would do? Come back like a little lost puppy. During that time, I feel like I lost my identity. My identity became him. He became who I was. And my whole goal and my whole world revolved around him. We were literally on the phone. If we weren't together, he would call me and want me on the phone with him every single second. And I believe it was because he did not trust me. And he thought I was doing the things that he was doing. And so he wanted to either be texting or talking every minute of the day. And when I reflect back on those days in my life, I don't even recognize that person at all. I have learned the way, as many of us do, the hard way. And I will never accept those kinds of behaviors again in my life. But sadly, at times, God allows us to go through things and lets us make our own decisions. We get off track of where we are supposed to be going because we think we know what's best or what we think we want and lose our focus on what God wants for our life. I look back on those days and I was so lost. And the reason I was lost was because my eyes got focused on a person and I lost sight of God for a moment. And I could tell you from experience, I never want to take my eyes off God again, because when my eyes are not focused on him, destruction, pain, hurt, and heartache always are a result. This is getting a little lengthy, so I think I'm going to make this into a 2-part series. And so this will be part 1, and part 2 have so much more information to go over, and I know it's getting to be long. So we're going to do the second part next week, and you don't want to miss it. It's going to be really good. There's a lot more great information.
I see here even something about flying monkeys. What the heck?
Yes. And so, in closing, though, I would like to say it's so interesting because I was going to do this podcast on Narcissist. I thought about doing it about a month ago. It started like playing in my mind to do it because I think it's so important for people that are in this kind of relationship to know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, because I found that light, and the light was Jesus. And so if you don't have Jesus on your side, I would think it would be virtually impossible to escape this, honestly. I don't think I could have done it without him. I'd just like you to remember, I know it could be hard at times, and life is full of hurts and pain, but always remember to smile through the tears, and God's always got your back. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Hope you enjoy the rest of your night, and I will be doing part 2 next week, so be looking forward to that. Thanks.